and your brothers, but the Phantom were a huge game changer for us in the beginning.
What if it was just a regular kind of show that talked about pizzas and subs and Chinese food and ice cream? I think Phantom Gourmet is food and fun. Sopranos is not as good as Breaking Bad.
We can have that debate. That's just episode 2.
I'm gonna throw a curveball in that.
I was slightly offended by that, I'm not gonna lie.
Welcome to the Behind the Rise podcast hosted by the Perrina Brothers. My name is Angelo, and I'm joined by my brothers and business partners, Lucho and Valentino. On this show, we will speak to successful local, national, and global entrepreneurs, as well as discuss lessons we've learned in our 15-year career building a 9-figure organization. We are in the middle of our journey now and want to share with you all the wins, losses, and lessons learned behind the rise. So today we have a very, very special guest, somebody near and dear to my heart, Dave Andelman, founder of the Phantom Gourmet. Welcome to the show.
You know, I love you guys and I love your restaurant, but I'm driving up here and I'm envisioning a big platter of meatballs and red wine or biscotti and Italian coffee. This is all you gave me was water. I mean, I thought I knew you guys better than this, but I'm happy to see you anyway.
I'm gonna be honest, I'm the only brother that doesn't drink coffee or tea or anything like that.
Or eat meatballs?
Yeah.
I don't think anyone in the restaurant business has ever told me that they don't drink coffee. That is a serious rarity.
Exactly. Big red flag coming from the corner over there.
Exactly. It's all right. It is what it is.
So Dave, welcome. Thank you so much for coming. I know your time is valuable and you're a very busy man. So we really appreciate you coming up here.
No. I love to see you guys. It's funny. I've been doing Phantom Gourmet for almost 30 years and I'm a big believer in small business. I think it's really the key to everything in America, right? Because no business starts with 100,000 employees.
Right.
They all start with small employees. And that's what creates the money that pays for everything, whether it's schools or jails or every program that you want. And getting a job is what changes things for you and your family. Because once you get that job, you can demand a raise or a promotion or go work somewhere else or start your own business. So watching you guys do what you do always warms my heart.
Yeah, that's awesome. So one thing, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but you and your brothers with the Phantom were a huge game changer for us in the beginning. That's why when I said in the beginning, like near and dear to our heart, you really made a difference in us in the beginning.
Well, we hear that a lot, and it always makes me feel really good. I was just at a restaurant in New Hampshire. Guy comes over and he actually kisses me on the cheek, and I sort of look at him and he goes, I've been telling people for 10 years, if I ever meet that Dave Andelman from Phantom Gourmet, I'm going to kiss him for what he did for my business. But it always makes me feel good when you meet somebody and they say, when I met you, I had 1 location and now I have 5, or when I met you, I had 9 employees and now I have 900. And I'm not saying that I was the cause of that, but if you can help somebody grow their business, that always makes me feel good.
Oh no, it was huge. So for us, when we had first started, we were in there, we were grinding, we were like learning, like we weren't very busy at all. And then we got the call that somebody from Phantom came in and they had liked the food and they wanted to come in and do a segment. And I remember it like it was yesterday. We were all like, holy shit, freaking out, like getting the place perfect. Like they're coming, like, you remember, like Dad was up like we were overnight, day and night.
Dad was going crazy.
We were going nuts.
The
like
amount of
cleaning. I remember we were scrubbing the walls, the ceilings, everything, because we wanted it to be perfect when you guys came in. So it was like a huge deal. And then I remember before, there would be people who live in the town that we're in, literally like, I went into Hannaford down the street one time and there was a cashier and I was like, I had a Toscana shirt on. She's like, oh, where's that? I'm like, do you live in Peabody? She's like, oh yeah, I've lived here my whole life and I've never heard of it. I'm like, you're kidding me. You literally drive past us for 30 years.
Biggest slap in the face ever.
But I do find that entrepreneurs, we have this weakness, which is because we spend 100 hours a week thinking about our business, we just assume that everyone
else is thinking about it too.
And they are not.
Exactly.
So, out of sight, out of mind. Something that I'm proud of at Phantom Gourmet, and I think our crew does a spectacular job. I mean, there aren't too many shows anymore locally, really, or nationally, that are doing 5-minute stories of the quality that we do. But I think we helped change restaurant coverage in the sense that we weren't relying on PR firms and it wasn't all just celebrity chefs kind of thing. we were finding places like Toscana's and Peabody that maybe you didn't know about.
Correct,
And you
yeah.
could sit there and watch the show with your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your wife, your husband, and say, let's go there. And it was one of those places you never would have found. And you can probably park there and get tremendous value and have the staff be excited you're there. Put it in the navigation system. Navigation systems really helped our business. So when I first started doing this, there really was no internet, right? So if you were in Newton and you wanted to go to Toscana's and Peabody, you'd have to find the phone number, call the restaurant, hope somebody picked it up, say, how do you get there? And invariably, because it's a transient industry, it'd be, hold on one second. Hey, Sully, how do you get to the restaurant? You know, they get back on there and say, if you go to the Sunoco, you went too far. But now you can watch our show and say, you know, let's take a drive. It takes you right there. And the other thing I think about our show is it's viral in the sense that our audience, once they find Toscana's and Peabody, they tell 100 of their friends,
Correct.
hey, I found this great place. Like, it's a cool thing now to tell somebody, I got a restaurant you never heard of. There's another Italian restaurant that I love called Da Vinci's, and I met them when they were in Boston. Now they're in Sudbury, and they just opened a place in Waltham.
Yep.
You know, and our fancy friends who think they know everything about everything will say, where can I go? And we'll mention Da Vinci's and be like, I never heard of it. And they kind of look at you disdainfully like, this can't be very good. And then we send them in there and like, wow, I got to admit, that restaurant is spectacular. No, I can't go anywhere anymore since I started doing this where I'm not just holding court after 4 minutes. Where do you go for Italian? Where do you go for steak? What's the best restaurant in Newton? You know, my dad was a guy that really sort of invented sports radio, and I like to talk about politics or business, but I have no choice.
Right.
Wherever I go, it is, what's the best steakhouse in Boston? And it's funny, people are so opinionated about food now. You know, it's like some of my friends are ready to get into a fist fight over Capitol Grill over Ritz Chris. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anybody who's tried more restaurants on earth than, you know, you and your brothers.
Not too many. We had this cameraman, Sean Finley, who was with us for 20 years. And I think we calculated one day that he had shot 4,000 restaurants, something like that. And he's like, not even my side. The guy's body was breaking down like an elephant in the circus. You know, he was like, David, I got aches and pains. I can't do this anymore.
Sean, I think actually he filmed our spot, if I remember right. Yeah.
Sean Finley, we call him the GOAT. I think he's won 12 Emmys or something like that. And by the way, a really great guy. You know, one thing that I think my crew doesn't get full credit for, my brother Danny in particular, is we're interviewing people that haven't been on TV before. And that's a real challenge. As you know, from coming into the
Big
studio,
time.
you see the cameras and you see the lights. It's like 1,000 lights up there, and you walk past like these people you've been watching your whole life, Jack Williams, you know, and you think everything's on the line and every little stumble is going to cause your business to get ruined.
Yes,
and you get
big time.
And you get terrified.
Yeah.
So I think my crew is really, really, really good at like making you relax,
100%.
making this all feel normal. And then before you know it, 5 minutes have gone by and you're like, geez, that was fun. That was not what I thought at all. I always tell my my friends this story, but it's really true. Danny and I were doing this show at TV 38, a movie night type show, you know, where we would have, and we were playing, I think it was Black Hawk Down, and we have this guest in studio, and this kid had been a medical type. They were flying him into Iraq on a helicopter to work on wounded soldiers, go back up in the helicopter and get back behind enemy lines. We bring this guy in to interview him, and he was terrified. And I look at this guy and I go, you flew helicopters into the middle of Iraq under gunfire, right? Was that scary? He goes, no, I was trained to do that. That didn't make me uptight at all. Right now, I'm ready to pass out.
That's crazy.
So if someone were to ask you, like, what is Phantom Gourmet? What would be like your 3 to 4 sentence description of what Phantom Gourmet is for anyone who doesn't know what it is?
Well, I think Phantom Gourmet is food and fun. The show really is designed in such a way that you sit there with, like I said, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your husband, have some fun, have some laughs, and say, you know what, why don't we go there for lunch? Why don't we go there for dinner? This Thursday, we're meeting 10 people. How about we go to that place? And that's really what we do. You know, life has gotten very, very serious since the pandemic. And I think that we all need to just kind of chill. And Phantom Gourmet, everybody has a smile on their face. It's just about food and fun and having a good time. And I think the show is really getting more and more popular for that reason. We all just need an escape. And luckily for me, when I first started doing this, there weren't that many restaurants in Boston. There was Anthony's Pier 4 and Durgan Park, and there was some interest in food and restaurants. But now, I mean, it may be the number one hobby in America, going out to eat. I mean,
Yes.
right up there with sports. It's something that people like to do, like to talk about. And another thing that I think is really great about restaurants, first of all, it provides incredible opportunity for people, minorities and women in particular. You don't need connections. You don't need fancy education. If you want to bust your ass, you can be successful in restaurants. But it also really allows you to have a great night out with your girlfriend if you don't have a ton of money. So I was at Cape Cod Cafe in Brockton the other night. You want to take a girl on a date, you can have a pizza and a couple of beers for $40, live like kings, really enjoy each other's company. And that's part of the reason that I'm so passionate about the industry.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I remember during COVID, like how much work you were doing to help support the restaurants. I mean, you were doing Facebook Lives every night, for like pushing people to get takeout, ordering takeout from everywhere. It was really something. Like you made it like your mission during that time, during the lockdown, to really help everybody that was in the industry.
Well, we did. We have always been very passionate about small business. Most of my close friends are business owners, only because we seem to understand each other. We're always thinking about our business. We like to get together at their bar and just talk things over. What are you doing? What are you hearing? I was so fortunate in my life, first of all, to be born in Boston. Second of all, to have great parents. Third of all, to be born healthy and to be able to, have my parents have the resources to send me not just through college, but through law school and business school. At the same time, I got a second education being around some of the top entrepreneurs in Massachusetts. And at the time that the pandemic first started, I knew how serious it was from a business perspective.
Right.
Because there aren't many Googles in the world that are sitting there with $100 billion in cash and they can ride things out for 9 years.
Correct.
Most people have to pay their rent, pay their utilities, pay their debt. So my brother Mike and I were as much therapists as promoters, going around to our friends and saying, look, it's going to be okay. Or I'll tell you what, let's go old school. Leave a bottle of bourbon on the table. We'll Uber home. Let's have a couple drinks and talk about what we're all going to do here. And you're right. We were doing everything that we possibly could to say, okay, look, you got to eat.
Right.
Get takeout, get delivery, be safe, but let's support our local businesses. Because, I was scared, and I was scared for them. I really was.
Yeah.
It was in such a way, in so many ways, it was such a difficult time. And I think one of the only positive things that came out of it was better outdoor dining. I know you guys have that beautiful space now.
Yeah, exactly.
I try to eat there at least once during the summer and just, be outside with Italian red wine and some food and just, enjoy the nice weather.
Yeah, and takeout. Takeout has...
That's permanent. That's a permanent change in the business.
It definitely is. Like it didn't go back to pre-pandemic levels. We're not at like peak pandemic levels, but still much higher than before. It's a huge thing. I never
used to get delivery, but the pandemic and Uber Eats changed things for me, definitely, because once you have that app and once they have your credit card, and I did it last night, you can go through and say, okay, what am I in the mood for? Greek food, Indian. I eat a lot of ethnic food, so I usually start with, okay, what do you have for Cuban, Indian, Greek food? And the restaurants got better at it.
Yes.
The packaging got better.
Correct.
The delivery services got better.
Right.
And I think, a lot of Americans now have their gigantic TV, and you're sitting there watching 9 straight hours of Yellowstone, and you don't want to get off the couch.
Yeah.
So it's something that I never used to do, but I do it periodically now. And I think one thing that happens that is to the benefit of the restaurant industry is I find places on Uber Eats. So like there's an Indian place in Arlington that I never would have found if it wasn't for Uber Eats. And now I go all the time. Or I happen to love Greek food. Hero City in Brighton, I became a huge customer of theirs as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, once you try it and all of a sudden it's in your rotation, it's in your purview now. So Dave, take us back to like, your childhood. Like what made you... I know, your father is a huge influence in you. You work with your brothers now, which is very similar to us. There's not that many three brother combos.
No, you really don't
that
hear
make
that
it
too often.
that far.
That still like each other.
Exactly. Like you guys get along great. You know,
we do.
talk. You know, a little bit about your childhood. You know, like how things were there, and you know what led you to get into the Phantom.
Well, my dad was a really spectacular radio talk show host. A lot of people call him the godfather of sports radio. I know guys like Chris Berman and Frank DeFord absolutely worship my dad, you know, saying what a trailblazer he was. But when you grow up like that, you don't really think about it. I just had a discussion with my parents about this. When I was 16, he was doing Sunday night radio in Boston, 7 to 11. And there was no internet at that time. So, and I was learning to drive, and he'd drive to a gigantic Cadillac. And I used to drive him into work at about 4:30, and I'd put together the sports scoreboards using the AP wire, and I'd write it all down for him. And then I'd answer the phones from 7 to 11 and put the callers on and off. You know, you got to screen the calls. Hey, what do you want to talk about? You know, and sometimes, I mean, these calls would just say vile things to me. You know, they've been drinking all day. They lost their sports badge. You know, they said, David Andelman? Yeah. And it was like, and I, you know, again, I was a 16-year-old kid. I'd answer the phones till 11. We'd drive home, talk about the show, go to bed at like 12:30. And I never thought that was weird.
That's awesome.
That's just how I grew up, you know, but I learned a lot about media and about business. And then when I was done with college, I had a year where I sort of refereed basketball games and bartended. I decided I was going to do a 4-year program at Northeastern where you get your MBA and your law degree.
Wow.
And started Phantom Gourmet at that time, you know, part-time. And then I passed the bar and everything. And I just assumed that I was going to be flooded with job offers. Be the president of my company. You're an attorney and an MBA. And I didn't get one. So,
And what year is that? Like, what timeline
let me
are we
see.
at?
I graduated college in 92, graduate school in 97. So 97, you know, I'm a young guy. I must have been 27. And I remember calling my dad. I said, I think I'm going to go into business myself. And he said, okay, but you're going to have to get up every day, shave, shower. I didn't know what the hell he was talking about, you know? I'm like, what? I see what he means now, because I was going down a weird path. I never had like colleagues where we went out to work after work. I was like buying my own health insurance. I was renting office space in Chestnut Hill. I was living a whole other weird life that my friends didn't understand, didn't get. And then when Danny graduated college, he was my first full-time employee. He taught himself how to produce a show. And I think we were on cable for 10 years. After 10 years, we started getting recruited by the broadcast stations. My brother Michael had gone to Georgetown Business School. He decided he was going to come on board with us. And that's when we signed with CBS Boston, which is Channel 4 and Channel 38 in this market. And that's like going from AAA to the majors. You know, it was like, whoa, this is a whole other thing. That's when people really started to recognize us and things started to take off.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I have a question. So how did it end up getting from idea to executing that idea? Because there's three brothers, and then how does your brothers kind of fit into that whole thing?
Well, you know, quite honestly, I think part of being an entrepreneur is being humble. And it started as a restaurant review show. You know, we had a critic and we were doing 5 reviews. And then when the internet came around, I realized now everybody was a restaurant critic. And reviews were kind of boring to my crew, and I think sort of boring to my audience. And at that point, I decided that I want us to be in the information and entertainment business. So those resources that we were spending on reviews, we started using to find restaurants, you know, and started adding to our production crew and saying, how about we just give you a super entertaining hour of television?
Yeah.
And Danny, who really was sort of hosting the show in the sense that he was really doing everything except putting his mug on air. We made him the host. He was tremendous at it. I mean, he was just always a natural performer. You know, he had been a child actor, and he has that personality.
Big time.
Yeah. I
Big
mean,
time.
Danny does not have a shy bone in his body. He can go up in front of 1,000 people, 10,000 people. He wouldn't be the slightest uptight about it. He's one of those guys, that really is his personality that you see on TV.
It is, huh?
He is the nicest kid. My father and I always laugh about it. I said, Dad, I totally understand why someone wants to punch you or me in the face. Like, we're opinionated. We may not be exactly for you. If you don't like Danny, there's something severely wrong with you. He's like my mother. And then my brother Mike is just a really smart guy. You know, he could have worked at Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan or something like that. And instead he decided to come on with us. You know, he thought that we had a lot of potential. And then, you know, besides TV, we went into the gift card business, the events business. We wound up buying Mendon Twin Drive-In. So I'd love to tell you that, you know, at that time I had this grand plan of exactly what we were going to be, but I didn't. And I see some entrepreneurs, they've got their 5-year plan, their 10-year plan. I have trouble having a 1-year plan. You know, I just looked at what I wrote last December. Here's what we're going to do this year. I was wrong about 3 or 4 pretty major things, and already had changed my mind. Nope, we're going in a different direction. You know, because there's always things that are going on in your company, and there's always things that are going on outside your company. You know, like you said, delivery. Like there's this whole thing, right? When I first started doing Phantom Gourmet, there was no navigation systems, there was no internet, there was no Facebook. You know, now I have an employee who all she does is run our Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Like, that is her job because it's become a big part of our business.
Yeah, and you guys have a great following on social.
We have over 1 million fans on social media, and I think what's so cool about it is you can reach out to your fans now anywhere at any time.
Right.
You know, so you can say, hey, I got to take out a client on Friday night. Where would you go?
Right.
Or my friend just ordered chicken parm with a side of vegetables. Should I walk out of the restaurant? Or, you know, tripe makes me sick. My friend insists on getting it. How do we solve this problem? Or, you know, do you tip the full 20, 25% on takeout? And you can really engage with your audience. But I think what always makes me feel good, particularly it seems like on Instagram, we'll post a picture and then you see hundreds or thousands of people saying, Angela, we should go to this place.
Yeah.
Or, Marie, your mom's coming in on Sunday. This is the place we should have. Or how about this for our baby shower? Everybody talking about, should we go here? I think that's really cool. The thing that has disappointed me about social media and the internet is I thought when I first saw it, when my first crew showed me what Facebook was and all this, I said, this is going to be such a great place for people of like interests to meet each other.
Right.
And discuss their common interests. But there's so much of it is, well, I hate you because you said this.
Exactly.
It went in a weird direction, and I'm hoping that it circles back to more of a yeah, you're like me. Can we get together? Because, you know, I just think it's such a great way to meet business people or to say, hey, I'm looking for this. Right. I think that's so cool about it.
Yeah, it's turned into just like a place where just people go to argue and fight out their differences. It's like people when they get behind the keyboard, they'll say things that they would never say in person.
Well, some, but there's a lot of positivity to it too. You know, I mean, I love the way that you know, your restaurant can say, "Come in on Friday."
Right.
We're doing a 2-for-1 lobster special, and you can get people excited about what you're up to.
Exactly, and you're instantly boom in front of all those eyes.
It's a really cool way to communicate with your customers.
Yep. Absolutely.
And then I have a question. What made you because now we're thinking back, right? I'm trying to think about this timeline. You graduated, you got a law degree, your dad's a savage warrior, and now you're like, I'm gonna get into food reviews. You know, like where did like the food review restaurant kind of turn into?
Well, what happened was my dad was working in sports, but he really always just used that as a backdrop for whatever he felt like talking about. Now, don't forget, my dad started when I was a baby, and it was just guys that got on the air and talked for 3 hours about whether the Red Sox should have bunted in the second inning. Mm-hmm. My dad gets on there and says, my wife hates me because she wants to go to the ballet and all I want to do is eat Kowloon and watch the Celtics game. Or the Red Sox don't have onions at the concession stand. Like, no one had ever done anything even remotely like that. And there was a good amount of stuff about sports, and there was a good amount of stuff about politics. Anything about food was really either recipes or very high-end dining. And he and I had talked about, what if there was just a regular kind of show that talked about pizzas and subs and Chinese food and ice cream? And the concept evolved from there, although it's a very, very, very different thing than what we were doing 30 years ago. But that's business, right? I mean, I think
Exactly.
anybody that's doing what they were doing 30 years ago is most likely out of business. You have the very rare exception, like Kelly's Roast Beef in Revere,
Right.
still doing what they were doing.
Right.
But those are 1 in a million type businesses.
Exactly.
Most people, if they're not changing, updating, I've become a student of the business of restaurants. Some of the people in the industry that have, thousands of employees will call me and say, hey, I want to buy you a drink. Can we talk about what's going on? And I always say, if I'm in your dining room or your bar and I'm on the younger end of your customer base, you're in trouble. You better,
Right.
you better,
exactly.
you better start reinventing yourself.
Exactly. I remember that was the thing when we first got into our restaurant. We were looking in the dining room, and it was like looking at the white mountains in the dining room, all white here. And we were looking at each other like, listen, if we don't do something, our entire clientele is going to be dead within like 3 years.
That's right.
So we got to stop doing the early bird like baked haddock special. Like we got to start shifting our strategy. We started pivoting and making changes along the way to make it more younger, more vibrant.
You watch some families, second, third generation, they get lazy, they get greedy, they never update the menu,
Right.
They never update the signage. They got a carpet. A
Right.
restaurant has been around for a long time now. If they have carpet, I don't think anybody's really building restaurants
Right.
with carpet anymore.
Right.
It's the immigrant families, it seems to me, that are hungry and are always reinvesting back
Correct.
into the business, which
Yeah.
is why I think you'll always have families in America moving up and down the income scale.
Right.
It's just the natural way that it works.
Yeah, the immigrant edge. We talk about that all the time.
It's true. Let me tell you something. I've been studying business. I think in court I would be certified as a small business expert to testify. I'm telling you for a fact that's what tends to happen.
Yeah.
One thing that my dad likes about my brothers and I is we're workers.
Right.
We are workers.
Right.
But it wasn't that long ago that our great grandparents came over here from Europe with nothing.
Right.
So I always think about the idea that if you could show them like what I have, my home, my car,
Right.
you'd be like, this kid's going to live on the moon.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's only 2 or 3 generations later, which is one of the things that I absolutely love about America. You can't do that everywhere in the world, but
Right.
you can do it here.
That's a fact.
Speaking of like back then, right? So when you guys first started doing like the reviews, it was just TV. Like there's no
Yes.
social media back there. There's
Right.
no YouTube back there. So can you say like what was the difference then compared to now? Like broadcasting, where you're putting your efforts, all that.
Well, we were doing an hour a week show on cable television, and we were doing it live, and we had no full-time employees. And I'm not sure I had too much of a vision beyond that, except I do laugh every once in a while. I'll go to a restaurant, and in the lobby, there's a letter from me and a Phantom Gourmet certificate of award. And I think we first started sending them in 1993. And I'll tell you why it makes me laugh. No one was watching. No one knew what Phantom Gourmet was. But here was this kid sending certificates out to restaurants saying, you should hang this in the lobby and really be proud of it. And I guess I had a vision. I'm not sure I knew the word brand, but I guess I had a vision that that was going to mean something.
Yeah.
But did I know that we were going to buy a drive-in movie theater or have all these other outlets? Or we didn't get into the events business until 2003, I think. We had just moved to Channel 4 and Channel 38. And this guy named Patrick Lyons, who I think they should rename Lansdowne Street, Lions Street, because... Yeah, and Patrick, he owns Summer Shack and King's and a lot of those places that are on Lansdowne Street and Swansea. You know, he's a pretty big-time player in the industry, and I didn't know him really at that time, except that I used to go to some of his bars. I knew who he was. And I went to him with this idea to do an event on Lansdowne Street, and it was going to be like sort of Boston's food. So we were going to have a North End and a Chinatown, and we were going to block it off and sell tickets. And I went in there. His office used to be at 7 Lansdowne Street. I remember I went in, I talked to him about it, and he said, okay, I like it. Let's do it. And I left, and I told my brother Michael about it, and he said, you're kidding, right? I said, no. He goes, David, I know you're kidding. I said, no. He goes, this is huge. And I said, why? And he said, because that guy knows what's going to be cool, and he's decided that we're going to be cool.
Yeah.
And so we did it, and like so many people came, it was a disaster. I didn't know that business. I didn't do a good job of it. But the thing that was positive was we had a very big following, and people liked the idea. And so the next year we got better. By the third year, we were really in our groove. It evolved into like a 10,000 person block party. We got really good at that business. And, now we usually do a few major events a year. And I dig that business. It's weird. Radio and TV and social media are great, and you see these huge numbers, but it's hard to calculate the number of people that are following you. But when you do an event like that, and there's 10,000 of your fans, a lot of them dressed in purple,
right?
You're like, whoa, there's a lot of people that are following this thing.
Those events, the Phantom Food Festival is the one that we've done a few times. I mean, the amount of people, I still have like these stories. Do you remember the first one we did when the rollatini?
These are the meatballs.
So we were like, you guys were telling us like there's gonna be a lot of people, like be prepared, this and that. So we're like, all right, yeah. So we rent a U-Haul truck. We had a couple of my friends who are actually they were like my good childhood friends, but they're our plumbers that we use all the time. So they came with us, Bob, Steve, and then we had a couple like bartenders that came with us. And we rented a U-Haul truck. We were up all night making rollatinis and meatballs and stuff, and then we loaded up at like 5 a.m. So we're on our way down to the where it is, and we're in the U-Haul. First of all, I go down Starro Drive with the U-Haul, and if everybody knows so I'm about to go.
Everybody's watching the news, going, another moron.
I'm about to go 60 miles an hour right into the bridge, and then Steve in the truck behind me was like, dude, stop. So I slammed on the brakes like literally 5 feet before hitting the bridge, turn around. And then like we had to back up. It was like a big thing. So then we get there, we unload. To this day, every time I see these guys, they're like, can I get you another rollatini? Can I get you another rollatini? The amount of rollatinis and meatballs that we gave out that day, like scarred. We were like scarred over it. We were like 10 hours, couldn't keep them in enough. It was absolutely
one year
insane.
We calculated we gave out 500,000 pieces of food in 4 or 5 hours.
I felt like 400,000 of those pieces came directly from us. Like it was like it never stopped. I mean, it was like incredible.
I'll tell you, something that I always loved about our events business is that after a while, it started to become like an all-star game for Phantom Gourmet fans.
Yeah.
We would only invite the people that we knew could do a great job, the places that our fans would be excited about. And if you watch the show, it's your chance to try dozens of places on one day in one location. And because of satellite TV, I was always amazed by the number of people who would come up to me on the street and say, we came down from Canada, we came from Memphis. We watch a show every week. And we figured this was our chance to try all these places.
Wait, so you broadcast in more than just New England?
Well, our show is on in Maine and Rhode Island.
Yeah.
But through the satellite packages,
I see.
Yes, it does go all over. You also can get the show on YouTube. And I think now you have people that really just know the show from social media.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure they know we have a TV show.
Right.
But you're watching because we're posting thousands of times a year. So if that's your thing, and for people who moved out of New England, they watch it and say that you guys remind me of home.
Yeah.
So now there's a lot of traction. I see there's a ton of traction with Phantom Gourmet. Everyone knows what Phantom Gourmet is.
Everybody.
But now let's go back a little bit, right? Where did you see in the beginning, like, because usually with startups, it becomes like, okay, I'm going to try this, see if it works. Then it's like, okay, there's a point of like, this is working. Let's double down and actually make this like a real business. Did you have one of those moments?
Yeah, we did. I would actually give my brother Michael credit. We were on cable, and Mike basically said, look, we got to take over this whole thing completely. You got to go to a broadcast station. I want to come on board. We can really make this thing fly. And, once you go from, at that time, it was a fairly small cable station. And once you go to 2 of the big 5, over the air signals, it's a whole other level of popularity.
Yeah.
And you knew it pretty quickly. You're walking around on the street and people are going, hey, love the show, love what you do. Restaurants that get featured are calling you and go, oh my God, you guys didn't tell me what was about to happen here. But I can't really tell you like there was a moment when I said, I got a great idea here, or this is the moment that changed things. It was just evolution and still is, right? You look around, my friend Patrick Lyons says, you're always in crisis mode or expansion mode, and the tough thing is to figure out which one you're in. Because like at 10 a.m., I'll be like, we are not doing a good job. And I'm at 2 p.m., I'm like, we got a great organization. We are killing it. I think all entrepreneurs feel that
exactly
way.
like us, yeah.
It's always a matter of, my brother Michael likes to say that Wayne Gretzky's quote was, I skated to where the puck was going to be, not where it is. So I think we're all always trying to figure out where's this thing's going, where are we going to be. Jasper White from Summer Shack, one of my favorite restaurants. Michael got married there. He used to say, how you're doing now is a reflection of how you were doing 6 months ago. And I tend to find that to be true. You can't turn the ship right now.
Exactly.
You got to be making moves right now. When we do an event, I like to have the date locked a year in advance, a full year. And I know people think I'm insane, but you want to start recruiting your vendors and have your fans put it on their calendar, because you always wish you had more time.
Always
wish. Exactly. I know you guys are about to open a new restaurant.
Yeah.
And I find most restaurant openings, no matter how hard you work, how diligent you are, how well funded you are, they're cleaning things up at 3:00 that afternoon, hoping that the health inspector comes over and says, okay, you can open. It's just the way it is. Especially now. I found since the pandemic, everything takes longer. Everything is just much harder than it used to be. We just did a contract with a big company, and it was like something that should have been over in 6 days took 6 months.
Yeah.
Because their attorney is at his house in the Hamptons, and the president is here, and the other guy, your attorney, is here, and it's just like, you can't get everybody together the way you used to. It's so hard. So an email goes out, and nobody's around to get it, and then by the time everybody gets it, they got to remind themselves where they were. Everything is just much harder. When people ask me about business, I always say it's just so hard, because you're always just... the landlord wants more. You lose a good customer. A good employee decides that he's going to move to Colorado. Your energy bill goes up, and it never stops. But I think business owners are worn out, because the last 3 years you were dealing with so many obstacles. It was like the phone would ring every day, and you're like, what? I remember at the drive-in saying to the food service company that we use, they couldn't get any frozen popcorn chicken and any soft serve ice cream.
Yeah.
And I was like,
what?
On this planet, there's no frozen chicken or ice cream? It has to be somewhere on the planet. Yeah. But it was like, that's just the world that we've been living in. And I wish that customers were a little more sensitive to just how difficult this is. A trend that I do not like is the customer going from 0 to 60.
Yeah.
Now, I guess you want to yell and scream at somebody like me, fine, I signed on for that. But hardworking people, cooks, waiters, waitresses, bartenders, I just think that's not cool. Or I know you guys are about to open a new place, and sometimes I'll see a restaurant open in some small town, and some customer says, I went there, I call upon no one to ever go there. I'm like, that's really what you want to happen? Right. You want this guy to lose this business, fire all his employees, pay no taxes, give everybody else nowhere to go. I just don't like that trend. If you don't like a place, you have every right not to go.
Correct.
Or tell your friends you didn't like it. But that 0 to 60 thing on working people is not cool. I'm glad that society is taking bullying more seriously. It should.
Yeah.
Nobody should be picked on for who they are.
Right.
But for some reason, we're still allowing it of working people. And I'd like that to stop.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. Like the expectations for, like, one of the hardest things during COVID was the expectations for service and quality of food was its highest ever.
Yes.
And it was 10 times harder to execute on that. You couldn't find good workers. You couldn't get good product in. Like the same steak or whatever that we were using, we can't get anymore. Like we're using alternative things. Like we're making the best of it. But people's expectations were higher than they were previous, And then now we have to charge more because of what's happening.
I know, they're taking it out on you.
Exactly.
It's not your fault. I mean, we just got our drive-in energy bill. I think it's close to triple what we were paying a while back. And we can sustain it, but there's small businesses out there. It's hard to keep the lights on.
Right.
And there's been a real crisis in labor. I mean, pretty much every business I talk to, they're ready to rip their hair out. Now, maybe it's a little bit better. If you're in Mendon, you're near a tea stop and the rent isn't that expensive, and it's a dinner restaurant, where you're making 20% of a good amount of money, and you can do it.
Yeah.
But in places where you have to drive that opened a lot of restaurants, Dedham or Burlington, or places in the Back Bay where you can't afford to live there if you're a dishwasher, and you really can't afford to take Uber home because the T is closed. They got a real problem that they're dealing with.
Yep. We've been so lucky in that department, and I tell people all the time, like, I literally, like, thank God, like, how lucky we've been in that department. But there's absolute nightmare stories out there, and I'm sure you're seeing it everywhere, like you said.
Well, in your defense, or to your credit, I think you guys do a good job of taking good care of your people, treating them well, paying them well. And I think business owners that are like that are being rewarded.
Right.
You have some of the old school owners that would pay the bare minimum that they
That's
could.
right, exactly.
And at that point, okay, if the employee can make another $1 an hour, he's going to leave. I mean, in my business, I always figured in the end, it was cheaper to give them really good salaries, really good benefits. I do it anyway, but it's cheaper because then they're not, all day looking for a better job.
Exactly.
And it's very expensive to find somebody, interview them, train them.
Yes.
I think with our company, it takes me at least 6 months to get someone to the point where they're really performing at 100%, at least 6 months.
Yes. And now in the restaurant, you don't have 6 months. You have like 6 hours before the next dinner service. So like if you lose like a fry guy who's really, really good,
I just had
to get someone trained. I mean, you can lose like 20 customers over a day period, 2-day period, if you don't have somebody good in that station.
I was just out with a bunch of guys that own restaurants. One guy has 4,000 employees. One guy has 80 employees. And I said, look, I go out 1,000 times a year. I have adopted a new attitude in the restaurant business because I understand that, you guys you have no choice. You got to find somebody and put them out there. And if I order a bourbon and they bring me a Corona, I just drink it.
Yeah, exactly. Just drink it. Yeah.
I'm happy to be out. And I was saying before, like, very little good came out of the pandemic, but I'll tell you one thing that I did try to take out of it. I'm so happy now when I sit down at a bar or a coffee shop or a restaurant. I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever.
Right.
Something you just took for granted your whole life. When they reopened Cafe Nero in Brookline after it had been closed for I don't know how long during the pandemic, I sat there for like 3 hours. I was so happy.
Right.
I brought a book, I brought my Kindle, my Wall Street Journal. I ordered a coffee, a water, another coffee, a pastry. I was like, so great to be out of our house. Humans are social animals. We were not meant to be locked in cages for 2 years. And I feel really bad. I think there is so much drug abuse, alcohol abuse, depression. I don't think we have fully wrapped our arms around all the problems that we're dealing with right now. I'm sure you guys have heard it. I've heard so many horror stories, and I just really feel for people that are struggling, kids in particular.
Yeah, like so I had a daughter born in the middle of the pandemic, so she's like a COVID baby, right? So like she is so attached, like it's like it's crazy. Like my wife, because they were in the house all the time together, right? Can't put her down. Like she's always like, so she's having a tough time transitioning into like school and stuff like that because then there's millions and millions of kids out there. But one thing's for sure is that people were meant to be with other people, to be social. There's a
theory of human evolution that part of the reason, besides strength and speed and your heart and everything else, is your ability to get along with other people.
Correct.
Because as tribes were moving around, if you couldn't get along with the other people, you had nobody to watch your back.
Right.
A lion could eat you at night. So I'm not saying that that's true or it's not true. I am saying that I knew for a fact that as soon as they allowed concerts, events, bars, restaurants, people would go back to their old habits. Because I remember when the marathon bombs went off, I was inside that bar forum.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was right there.
Wow.
And I remember people saying nobody's ever going to come to the marathon anymore. And I ran it the next year, and they were 9 deep from Hopkinton through the Back Bay.
That's awesome.
So I don't care. People are always going to want to go out, see each other. Our drive-in, we managed to get it open during the pandemic after taking a lot of safety procedures, and it had a record year, and it's had a great year afterward. People went. It's fun to be around other people. The vibe is just great. We did 2 years ago. we did the Phantom Gourmet Food Festival on Moody Street in Waltham.
Yeah.
I think we had our biggest day of ticket sales the first day we put it on sale ever in our 20-year history in the business. People were so excited to be out. I remember grabbing my brother Danny on the street, at 2 or 3, and we're running around that day like maniacs, and we both basically said the same thing at the same time. Man, I haven't felt this good in 2 years.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I felt so happy. Like people are, they're making money and they're marketing their businesses and they're smiling. And, when I do an event, the thing that makes me feel best is to see groups of people taking pictures.
Yeah.
I know that we're creating a day that they want to remember and they want to tell other people about.
There's nothing better than launching an event and getting tickets right away. I feel like the work, because I used to be in the event space a little bit. When you launch an event and like the first 2 days there's no sales, you're like, shit. But when you launch an event and the hundreds of sales go off right away, you're like, yes, we got something.
I'm sure in the beginning that was the thing for you. Now it's like you put it out there. There's sound.
No, look, I always think I have a good feel for what people are going to want to do. And the way that I tend to operate is I ask smart people inside and outside my organization, what do you think?
Yeah.
And if as a rule, they all go, that sounds great, it's a winner.
Yeah.
And if as a rule, they sort of say, I don't understand what you're talking about, David, it's probably a loser.
Yeah.
So, and now you have we have 1 million social media fans. You could say, hey, how about a barbecue event in October? And that kind of helps let you know. But, media is a weird business. I mean, I know that there was times that I said stuff on TV and people would mention it to me months and years later. And there was other times I said something that I thought was super clever and nobody got it. So I don't know. Especially, I think media is a super weird business. I like that show, Pawn Stars. Me and my dad. Like
I love
it.
that show.
Yeah, and we call each other.
You can binge the hell out of that.
I called my dad a couple months ago. I go, Dad, the sound of the Pope's slippers. He goes, I know, I'm watching it right now. But I hate that show, Pickers. Now, it's basically the same show. Why do I like the Pawn Stars guys? I don't know. That's the business, right?
Yeah, that's funny.
Can you talk about the evolution of, because I think media is probably one of the biggest changing industries. If you look at the past 30 years, what changed the most? Media is like, holy shit, what's changed?
Yeah.
Can you talk about like the pivots along the way, or like when social media was a thing, kind of what your pivot into social media was compared to like traditional media?
Well, I remember when AOL bought Time Warner, I was like, wait a minute. AOL is worth more than Time Warner. Like Time Warner is a big media company. Now, as it turned out, that was maybe the worst merger in the history of corporate America. It was an absolute disaster. I remember everybody telling me, like, you got to get into the internet. There's going to be no television, and I was like, well, I don't know. If that happens, then we'll stop doing television. But I'm not making an all-in bet on the internet as of right now. In a way, I think we're living in a golden era of television because these shows like Yellowstone or Sopranos or Breaking Bad, which I think is the greatest show in the history of television. Some of my Italian friends in particular get riled up when I say Sopranos is not as good as Breaking Bad, and they start yelling with the yelling and screaming.
Yeah, I mean, we can have that debate. That's episode 2.
I'm gonna throw a curveball in that
I was
conversation.
slightly offended by that.
I'm gonna throw everyone under the bus here, and it's Game of Thrones, and there's no competition.
Game of Thrones, you definitely can make the argument that was the greatest show ever in this sense.
Yeah.
There was 50 super compelling characters in that show.
Right.
And what they did visually was so spectacular. I don't know what else you would compare it to. I mean, they're riding around in fire-breathing dragons and you're buying it. You're not like, this is weird. But that was also emblematic to me of a certain problem in media and society in general, which is the show ends. It's this incredible human achievement between the actors and the technical people and the writers. What they did, creating that world, was so incredible. And it gave me so many hours of enjoyment and so many millions of people, 1 billion hours of entertainment. And then people are on the internet saying, that ending was awful and they ruined it. And it's just like, but do you see what they just did?
Right, exactly.
like I just sit there in awe of how spectacular it was.
Right.
So I think that, and this is not just media, but it's in business, which is that, they can really get to you now very quickly. When my dad was doing radio, you had to write a letter to him to say, hey, Dad, Eddie, I hate you. they can email you in 5 seconds. They can do the same thing at your restaurant, right? I mean, I always tell people, if you have a problem at a restaurant, if you really have a problem, you can send a certified letter and say, here's a copy of my receipt.
Right.
And this was a total disaster.
Yeah.
You don't have to, go from 0 to 60. I don't know why
Right.
people. Getting back to the media question, look, I think all the media companies, I guess mine included, are trying to figure out where is all this headed, right? Are we going to have traditional TV? I certainly think that the news business is struggling.
Yeah.
My friends has been talking about that. He's in that business.
There's maybe too many news stations. Maybe some of them can't do it anymore. Maybe the model will change. Maybe Netflix will start doing a nightly newscast. I could see something like that happen. Sports are bigger than ever. The rights fees that the NFL is getting are outrageous.
Crazy.
I think the Celtics, because of TV now, are worth $4 billion. They bought them for $380 million.
Wow.
I'm a massive boxing fan, and people like to talk about the demise of boxing, but boxing isn't free on Channel 7 on Sunday afternoons now. You pay $80 for a fight.
Right.
And Floyd Mayweather is probably the highest paid athlete ever.
Right.
He makes way more than Tom Brady.
Yeah.
So I know the technology has really improved in production. Our show looks better than it ever did.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you can see the steam coming off the food with the lights and the audio. The TVs are way better than they used to be, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can buy now a 75-inch TV or a 60-inch TV, and I'm not saying it's cheap, but it's a hell of a lot more affordable than it used to be.
100%.
So where's it all headed? I don't know. I'm reading a book right now about YouTube, and when YouTube first came out, some of the big companies were trying to stop YouTube from using clips of their shows, and eventually YouTube convinced them that they could be partners. I think people are definitely finding Phantom Gourmet through social media.
Yep.
And I think that, the show is as popular or more popular than it ever was.
Yeah.
Are some of these cable stations going to go away that have small followings? I think that's going to happen. As somebody reads the Wall Street Journal every day, I never really tend to believe in the philosophy that we got to just get bigger. Usually that strategy doesn't work.
Right.
Yep. And they're unwinding AT&T right now because they realize that guys that sell cell phones probably aren't the right guys to run HBO.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like you're like a trailblazer in the food reviewing space. I mean, right now there's guys like David Portnoy. There's this new guy that just went on TikTok who just helped that restaurant in Las Vegas. I'm not sure if you guys saw that, but I feel like you literally were the first original food reviewer.
No, I can't say that, but I can say that I'm proud. I think that my crew helped change the coverage of restaurants. I don't think before us anybody was going out to Worcester to find a place for cannoli or egg rolls.
Yeah.
That was just not
There's
done.
no question about that.
I just don't think that was done. And our whole approach that this is just fun, I think that was different too. I think that before Phantom Gourmet, nobody in that world would even consider mentioning chicken parm because their colleagues were going to say they don't serve chicken parm in Sicily.
Yeah.
And we were like, I don't know, people like it. They like poo-poo platters.
Yeah.
Why can't this be fun? I always thought that the wine industry made a major mistake making people afraid to order wine.
Yeah.
Why couldn't you just say wine is great, it's tasty.
Right.
And if you happen to want a Chardonnay with your steak, have a party. Why are we trying to shame everybody?
Exactly.
So I think our approach is has been down to earth and fun. But I'll tell you what, I think that our crew has probably won 30 or 40 Emmy Awards. They're making 5-minute stories that have been thoroughly scouted, researched, written, produced, shot, edited. I was a young guy when I first started doing this, but I think if you came to me now, I'd be like, bud, that is way too labor and expensive.
Right.
If I told my father what I spend on the show, he would smack me in the face.
Right.
But I think that our product is absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
And it really makes you want to go to these places. And I think something that we do that's really cool is we find someone like you guys, self-made, hard workers, and we go out there and tell your story. And who else can do that?
No. I mean, it was a major. It was like a huge pivoting turning point for us, you know. And you're doing that with people all around New England.
And then how did the drive-in stuff happen? Well, I don't even know what that is. So
no, huge, beautiful drive-in, like one of the last ones left, right? And
I'm really proud of it. My brother Michael, I mentioned him earlier. He went to Georgetown Business School. He's a very bright guy. And he calls me one day and he says, I know you're going to think this is stupid. I think we should buy the Mendon Twin Drive-In. And I go, I like it. He goes on for 20 more minutes and I go, but I don't think you heard me. I like it. Because I understood right away that it was a business that we could go in and really improve. So it's a 2-screen drive-in out in Mendon, Massachusetts. For those of you who don't know, that's out towards Hopkinton where they start the marathon.
Yep.
It can fit 700 cars. It's got a snack bar. It's got an ice cream stand. And we wound up buying the business. And there used to be 4,000 or 5,000 drive-ins in the country. I think now there's maybe 300. You know, most of them now are Home Depots or something else. And we went in there, and for about 2 years, we really spent our time and money maintaining the nostalgia, but bringing new modern twists and turns to it. So we built a beer garden called Pop's Beer Garden after my dad. We renamed the snack bar Judy's Snack Bar, and we added pizza, different things. The lines used to be maybe 45 minutes. We managed to get it down to 7. And I sort of did a little bit of what you guys do, which is I sat there all night, usually like with teenage kids, and be like, wait a minute, I think the popcorn machine has to go over here, and the hamburger machine has to go over here. Sausage takes 6 minutes. We can't do that anymore. So I think we could make our fried dough better.
Yep.
We did that. Different ways to park the cars. We put in music and a slide and started running events during the day or different events at night. Like we do Rocky Horror Picture Show twice a year. They're the best customers. They come, they're weird, they have the best time, they eat, they drink, they behave themselves, they're awesome. So we brought, maybe 100 innovations to that business nobody ever really seen before. But I go there and it just puts me in such a good mood because it's one of those businesses where it's a combination of families, people on dates, older couples that have been doing it for a long time, teenagers. Every year we have a bunch of wedding proposals. We added a big, if you know the Tent in Quincy, used to be the big nightclub where all the Patriots hung out. So that was owned by a guy named, it was owned by Ed Kane. Then it was owned by Frankie DiPasquale, who actually has great Italian restaurants.
Yes, he does.
And I was hanging out with him one day and he said, you just bought that drive-in, right? And I said, yeah. And he said, could you use the Tent? And I go, the Tent where Tom Brady used to party?
Yeah.
He goes, yeah. And I go, how much? And I'm thinking he's going to say 50, 75,000. He goes, you can have it. Wow. So I called one of our employees. I said, go check it out. It was in Quincy. And he said, for 8,000, we can fix it, bolt it, move it. So I called my brothers, and I don't know which of the 3 brothers in your company is the one that, does what I do, which is to call them and go, I want us to own the tent. It's only going to cost us 8,000. And they go, well, what are we going to do with that? I go, I don't know. I just know that's cool, and it's definitely worth more than 8,000. So we moved it out there, and now we do like PTA functions and wedding rehearsals, and just all these things that nobody ever done in that industry before. And it's really great. If you've never been there, I would suggest that there's going to be an amazing slate of movies this year because Hollywood is now finally caught up on production. And they've also decided that they were passing up all the movie money to put stuff on their streaming services, and that probably doesn't make sense. So there's going to be this amazing string of movies. But like last year, when we played Top Gun, it was like, for 8 weeks, bang. I mean, we were banged out every night. I don't think we're ever going to have another movie star like Tom Cruise.
Oh, yeah. That movie was awesome, by the way.
It was great.
The new one's awesome.
And to see it on the big screen under the stars, we were the best place to see that movie in New England. Just like if there's a Star Wars movie in December, we stay open because when you see those movies under the stars or like Jurassic Park, it's spectacular. And we wound up actually renting the place for an Adam Sandler movie because Sandler's guys, whenever there's a big movie like that, they all come to our drive-in to see it.
Really?
Yeah.
Is there anything more American than watching Top Gun at a drive-thru?
Well, I was so happy that it was just kind of like this old school American, these guys are handsome and we're going to root for the good guy kind of movie,
How does it work though in the movie industry? Like, how do you know which movies you can like play or which ones you can't?
Buy the rights for them.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. We had these weird moments when we bought the drive-in and, like we're just like little kids. So when we first bought it, we're walking around and we go to inside the snack bar and we go, we can have all the popcorn and soda we want. There's nothing anybody can do about it. And then we realized that we were going to be directly in business with Fox, Disney.
Right.
We write them a check based on the percentage of sales. And usually you have a broker who goes to them to cut your deals. But, people sometimes think like we're just playing movies from 1960. It's a first run movie theater. So if the movie is coming out on Thursday or Friday, we have it and we'll play it for 2 or 3 weeks. Or like in the case of Minions or Top Gun or Jurassic Park, you might play it for 8 weeks. And another thing that we did that was different in that business was we really extended the season. So we'll be open in March. And we'll run right through January 1 if the weather allows. So a much, much longer season. So we're basically now only closed in January, February, which you have to because of the weather. But we also, we have repairs. I mean, something that I take pride in is reinvesting back into our businesses. So I always have my projects that I want to do. Or like if you watch Phantom Gourmet, you'll notice that every 2-3 years we have a completely new graphics package.
Yes.
And as soon as you put it on, a few people call and complain and go, I hate that new look. But 2 weeks later, they can't remember. So
right, exactly.
It's better to start it earlier than later. I know one of my friends that owns a lot of Dunkin' Donuts told me, you have to remodel now every 5 years just to stay current. It's no longer even an investment in your business. You just have to do it.
You have to do it.
You have to do it.
So, last question. What is the best advice you can give a young entrepreneur, somebody just starting out, that you wish that you had that cheat code that you knew back then?
I'll give you a piece of advice that my dad gave me when I was like in my 20s. I was complaining. I don't know what it was. He said, I'll never forget it. He said, David, life is not a fraternity party. I always try to remember that. It's gonna be hard. People are gonna hurt your feelings. They're not gonna be fair. You're gonna have it's hard. I think the hardest thing about being an entrepreneur is the grind.
Yes.
It never stops.
Right.
And it will never stop. They're gonna call you and say there's a hole in the roof. The chef quit. That never stops.
Right.
If I was gonna give a young person advice, and I'm not really one to give advice, but I would say this has worked really well for me. I get up every day about 5:30 or 6. I read the Wall Street Journal, basically all of it. Not the stock prices, but everything that's happening.
Yep.
I like to know about. It helps me know what's happening with you, what's happening with Ernie Bach, what's happening with my friend that's in insurance and cars. I sort of know what's going on. And I get it on the Kindle because I wake up so early. A lot of times my journal hasn't arrived or they throw it in a bush. So I get it on the Kindle and then I work out hard for an hour.
Nice.
And so by the time 9 o'clock rolls around and I'm ready to leave my house, my mind's working good. My body's working good. I think if you were a younger person, that's something that I got into a little later in life.
Yep.
But I probably should have started that when I was about 18 or 22. I just think that you want to form those habits early.
Yeah, that's great advice.
You got to take care of yourself. And I find that not only do I feel better physically when I work out, but a lot of the problems that have been rolling around in my mind, I work out while I'm lifting weights,
100%.
while I'm running, while I'm boxing. All of a sudden, it kind of comes to me.
Yeah, that's great. Great advice. That's 100%. I've had the same experience.
Do you have any advice with because you're in the review space, right? I'm assuming there's been a ton of times where you guys had internal conversations of why don't we review a different industry? Why don't we review the car business or whatever, any other business? How important do you think it was for you guys to stay niche in the restaurants?
Well, first of all, I don't really consider us in the review business. I think we're in the sort of information and entertainment business. In other words, as I started to really think about it years ago, I was like, how do you even really review a restaurant? In other words, your place isn't for everybody. I happen to love it. And I think our audience loves it, but it's not, how do you even say, there's people that do not want to pay $73 for a steak.
Right.
They think that's ridiculous. My parents have never had sushi, so we're not really in that space. I think all businesses always have to be asking yourself, what business are we in, right? And certainly I've had people say, you should do breweries, you should do golf courses, you should do all these things. But I always resisted that because I think that we're good at this, and we're really good at this. And I've continued to see growth in this. I think the tough challenge can be, you realize there is going to be no more growth. And it's like, what are we going to do now?
Right.
Then you can say, this is what we are. And some businesses, and by the way, sometimes it's rational. They say, we've had an Italian restaurant for 50 years and our kids don't want to do it. And we're not going to replace the carpet or the menu. We're going to ride this thing out until the end of our lease.
Right.
I don't think that will ever happen to me because I'm too excited about what we're doing. And if I wasn't going to reinvest my time and money into it, I think I'd sell it.
Right.
And
Exactly.
get out of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we talk about that. And even when we decided to sort of stop with reviews, it was like, are we really not going to do reviews anymore? And then you realize, it's okay. The space has changed. I find that restaurant owners are very reluctant to reduce their menu. You know what I mean? They're
Right.
like, well, I have 4 people that like the blackened chicken Alfredo. Well, that's not enough.
Yeah, exactly.
I think part of what a lot of owners, including me, learned during the pandemic was less is more.
Right.
Right. I had 48 things on my menu. Let me just do 29 of them really well.
Yep.
I used to stay up until 1 in the morning. I'm going to stay up until 11 in the morning. I just talked with a guy that I think owns some of the best restaurants in Massachusetts. And he said, after 11 o'clock, you can get Caesar salad, shrimp cocktail. I can't have my chefs there all night long.
Right.
And I've found in my life, less tends to be more. I'm even at my house, I'm very much of a minimalist.
Yeah.
I must have gone to Goodwill or Savers or Salvation Army at least once a month the last 2 years because I had time and I'm like, I don't need all this stuff. And I got to tell you, my mind works better now. I'm more relaxed in my house. I try to keep my car like that, my office like that. I think Americans are just accumulating too many things.
Yeah.
You don't need all these things.
Yeah, that's great advice. All right, everybody. So Dave Andelman, thank you so much for coming. This
This
was
was
great.
fun, you guys. I want to say I did not get the red wine and meatballs that I was expecting, but other than that, this was really
Well,
this
wait,
was-
the day is young. The day is young. We have plenty of time. We can head over to the restaurant, have
All
some
right,
meatballs.
and I know your new place is opening soon, and I'm all excited. Congratulations! I really I love watching you guys do your thing. I love that you're brothers like us. I love that you're so down to earth and so hardworking, and I wish you guys all the best.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dave. All right, that's a wrap.